All right. Yeah, so obviously it was a wild night. I kind of had to wake up in the middle of the night, and by the time I'd woken up, everything had people were already pissed, and I just saw all the messages like, devs do something, and you know, the usual, which is really quite sad because I have a market maker bot running and it's using the same nodes. And the market maker is definitely down like a lot. Well, I run several, so some of them were down, some of them were up, but the one that I started last week with 100K is now at like 92K. So maybe and maybe that needs to be adjusted. But yeah, there's just a lot of issues, and yeah, that's what's on everyone's mind. But positive, and I don't know if you'd consider this a positive, but we did have 300 million in volume, and I shared a link to our Metabase dashboard in the chat, and you can always kind of go check up on that. Maybe I could even share screen. Let's see. Yeah. Share screen. Whoops. Can you guys see my screen? Yeah, I'm guessing you can. Yeah, so 300 million 24-hour volume, that's like the highest it's ever been by a huge amount. It's not a happy 300 million, I would say. I mean, I would have preferred if it was, a bull market and people were making money and people weren't getting liquidated and our nodes weren't having issues. But nevertheless, a bunch of transactions did take place on the platform. And there were some liquidations. I heard 10 million was the number. And then there was also a hit to the insurance fund. I don't know if Ridden, do you have a number on that? Like how much that was? I'd have to go look up the insurance.
It was $4,100
okay.
earlier today.
Yeah, so $4,000.
I don't think anymore.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I know why that happened. So let's kind of get into the problems of yesterday. So yesterday, there was a big drop, and I was working on other stuff, and then I went and started looking, and there were a lot of transaction timeouts in my market maker. So, and that's the service that I run. I don't normally like click trade on the platform very much, but I would say during the volatility yesterday, not the big one, the one before, I would say like 95% of my transactions were getting timed out. And timeout just means like it's hard to keep track of timeouts because it's purely on the client side where you keep sending the transaction over and over and it never makes it into the block, right? And timeout is just like we arbitrarily set 30 seconds as the amount of time you will wait to receive confirmation that it reached the block. And after that, you just say timeout, like, this looks like this transaction is not getting it in. So it's hard to keep, we don't have statistics on that. Clark Kinney was able to produce statistics on actual errors, like when you make a transaction and you get an error. We have some statistics on that, although I consider them a little bit dubious. But it's very hard to get statistics on the timeouts because it's purely on the client side. But we're gonna attempt to do it. I realize we have to. So we were messing around. We're like, how do we stop this? Changing different nodes. And just so we're clear, like it's not like we have some special access to, like, we're all hitting the same timeout issues as everyone else. And okay, so after that volatility, things like settled down, and I was like, okay, well, I'll wake up tomorrow and try to fix this. And yeah, then somebody decided to crash the market, and same thing, same thing happened again. So, here's what we do know. Or, okay, so there's a lot we don't know about this RPC, these node issues, and honestly, there's a lot that even our node providers don't know. And so we're just gonna have to read the code, experiment, and figure things out. But here's what we do know. We do know that this is a general problem in the ecosystem where
10 mil, and then you take away lawyer fees.
All right, so I don't know who that was. Let's can I?
Well, I don't know.
All right, muted him. Great. Yeah, please mute yourself if you don't intend on speaking. That'd be good. Yeah, on the topic of RPC, this is like a general problem. I'm not sure that adding more nodes will necessarily help. The number of transactions, like TPS on Solana, isn't going that high, or when a lot of people attempt to make transactions, it doesn't. God, I forgot what the number was, but was it like 1,500 TPS or something like that? And so it could be, I'm not saying it is, but it could be a general problem with Solana architecture itself. I mean, I personally don't know. Just like this week started getting into the logic of the validator itself. So yeah, there's that. It's a general system or general Solana problem. And some guesses that we have is like, okay, maybe it's maybe it's worse for Mango in particular. I think that's possibly true because we do a lot of caching, and like our system is just more complicated than most other protocols on Solana, and so it's possible. I was not so worried about like read-write contention, and there are certain accounts that are written to all the time. So one major cause of error last night and yesterday was you would get a lot of these invalid price cache, and a lot of people kept asking us about that. And so this is the answer. The invalid price cache is when we run a keeper to cache the Oracle price onto a Mango account, and a lot of basically every transaction reads from that account, but the keeper writes to that account, and if the keeper is timing out, it's not able to get a transaction in, then the cache becomes invalid. It becomes stale. You need to update it at least once every 5 seconds, and no matter how many keepers you run, if they're not able to get through, then that cache is going to be invalid, and you're going to keep getting these invalid price cache errors. And so that compounded all the issues. So even if you're able to get your transaction through and into the block, it fails because the program says, "Oh, this price is stale. We wait until the keeper updates." But the keeper, to fix the keeper is not so easy, and so. Yeah, and we have to figure out, like, is it a structural issue with Mango, structural issue with Solana, so forth. Yeah, and that, like, if we're able to solve that, and I mean, this was a good stress test. We obviously didn't pass the stress test. Like we maybe passed it on the barest minimum level, which was, okay, there were liquidations. The insurance fund only lost $4,000. The thing didn't, things roughly worked as they should, but no one was able to place any trades during the volatility. And so yeah, so I would say we passed, maybe passed, but definitely didn't pass it based on what we want to achieve. But it's something we have to solve, and I'm all open to any suggestions. And definitely, it's like a top priority, because if we can't solve it, then we can't scale 10x, as we want to do. Yeah, sorry guys. This is kind of like a very disorganized, rambling thing because, last 24 hours have been kind of didn't have time to plan out what the discussion today would be.
Can you say more about the keeper? So I was just trying to understand the issue that happened there. So the RPC node, okay, there's two separate issues, right? The RPC node's going down, which is bad for the GUI, and then there's the keeper thing going down. So was the keeper going down systematic linked to like the RPC nodes going down? Like, is the keeper run on like its own node? Should it be run on its own node? Should it be treated like an oracle? I mean, yeah. What's up with that?
Yeah, so it is kind of it should be treated like an oracle. It's a very we don't run our own oracles, but this component is very important for the liveness of Mango markets. Okay, so two things. The keeper is. It turns out we weren't running it on, so it's running on two different like node providers. We're running two and they're running on different node providers. And we do have like a super special, super secret node that like nobody else has access to. And we weren't running it on that. But even after we switched it to run on that, it didn't help very much. So it makes me think it's not quite a node. It's the same issue that everyone else is facing, which is transaction timeout. But it makes me think it's not the RPC node necessarily. That's the problem. And some of you guys who maybe used other nodes can talk about this. If maybe your experience was great, like during the whole volatility and everything was fine. In which case, then we know it is an RPC node issue and we just need to buy more nodes or figure that out. But I kind of suspect it's not, because even when you switched one of the keepers to our own special secret node, didn't help very much. Helped a little, for sure.
Is the secret node run by the same company that your main node's on?
Yeah. Yeah, secret just means it's not you guys don't, it's just a separate computer that no one else has access to. Should
we incentivize somebody to run a keeper on a different RPC, like different provider? Or do you think they're all running the same software anyway?
Well, there's two. They're running. Yeah. So that might be a thing. Maybe we could add like more keepers. But that could even be a problem if the keepers are causing write lock contention. Read-write, you can only write to an account. Only one thread can write to an account. And when that thread is writing to an account, no one else can read from that account, which means if the keeper is writing to the Mango cache, then nothing else on Mango can happen during those milliseconds or however long that takes. So if you increase the number of writes to the keeper, to the cache, that is, increase the number of keepers, it could degrade performance further. I mean, I don't know, or it might improve. This is like a thing we have to experiment. So incentivizing more keepers could be a solution. I don't know. We gotta have to experiment. But we do have it with two different providers, with Genesis and Triton. We could, of course, go with another one. Yeah, we'll see if maybe that helps. But yeah, they're mostly all running the same software anyway. Maybe with slight modifications for read purposes, like fetching Mango. Mango accounts are cached and more performant, but other than that, they're pretty similar. So yeah, if that explains the keeper. So the keeper was having the same issues. Therefore, you were getting a lot of like staleness in the cache, which meant that users, even if they were able to get through, often, get their transaction through, often it would fail. It would be included in the block, but it would be a failed transaction because the cache was stale. So that compounded, that was a double whammy there. Does that answer your question? Yeah, well, I think that was Henry who asked the question. Okay, but
Oh, it was Brian. Brian asked the follow-up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you. That does. I mean, I don't
But
know
go-
that it's an answer, but it definitely answers my question and understood.
Yeah, but the other thing is, we have this thing like, when we were designing Mango, or when we were designing V3, I didn't know what was the single-threaded write capacity on Solana. I talked to Henry, or Henry gave me a number, Anatoly gave me a different number. And I think it was like, Anatoly said something like 1,000 transactions per second, or basically as many as the thread can process, as fast as a CPU core is. And that may be false. Like we might just be hitting up, like this Solana isn't like that. It's fairly new still, and we're still kind of hitting all the extremities of it. We're kind of testing it out live right now. So is it 1,000 transactions per second? If it's 1,000 transactions per second, I was like, oh, okay, this is not a problem. Like, we don't need to worry too much about read, write, and all this stuff. But maybe it is. Yeah, who knows? Going forward, we're probably not going to have a keeper, right? We're not going to do this caching thing. It's going to be, you're just going to have accounts, and you have address maps, and that's coming out in Solana 1.9, which I don't know when it'll actually come out, but it's been planned since like 6 months ago, 7 months ago. So hopefully we'll get around that. But some of these other issues of read-write contention will still exist to a lesser degree. Yeah.
I'd like to hear. So I had assumed that the issue was the RPC nodes, but Brian Long says it's the validator. So I'd like to. I mean, if it's okay with you, Daffy, can we hear from Brian?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Brian's here. I didn't know.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, just popping in on your dev meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll try to find a link on Twitter. You might follow Buffalo or Buffalo, however he pronounces that, who wrote up a pretty good Medium article about how transaction is processed on Solana. But in regard to the RPC nodes, the only thing that they do is forward the transaction. So transaction is prepared by the app, signed by the wallet, sent to the RPC node, which is then immediately forwards it to the validators that are next in the leader schedule. So once that happens, there's really nothing to do with the RPC node. It's all in the validators and it's all in the transaction queue.
So essentially, what you're saying is that there was no real issue with RPC node sending transactions. It was the fact that we had so many transactions on Mango that it actually hit the write lock. I thought it was 100 per second or something. I thought that was the amount of like write locks you could get on a specific account.
Purely speculative. Like,
yeah,
no, not your number.
Yeah.
No. I mean, your number is purely speculative, but also my theory about what the problem is also speculative. Literally, I came up with it like 20 minutes ago, chatting with Brian. So
yeah, it is speculative. There's one chart that I wish that I could show everybody.
I mean, you can.
It's on the metrics. It's the Solana metrics server actually, and Joe Abanto had to hide it and restrict access, so we couldn't do a public link. But it shows the pending transaction queue on the validators. And what we see is when that gets really elevated, you do have transactions that time out while they're sitting in the queue. Every transaction has a life of 150 slots. That life is determined based on the original block hash time. So the slot in the block hash when the transaction was created. And so when the pending transaction queue gets really big and things back up, you'll have transactions expiring while they're sitting in the queue. I'm going to try to find a public chart that I can link to so that you guys could actually keep an eye on this. But
I also send a screenshot of it.
yeah, I can send you some screenshots. I'll try to do that while we're chatting on this call so you can see it. But if you're looking at explorer.solana.com, and if you notice a dip in the TPS, so there's a TPS chart at the bottom of the page. If you see that the TPS dips down around 1,000, you can assume that the inverse is happening on the transaction queue because they're always correlated. So it means that the pending transaction queue is shot up at that time. Let's see. Yeah, so I'll post a couple here into the Slack chat window so you guys can see that. Let's see. There are two causes for that pattern that I've been able to identify so far. One is extremely heavy activity on a trading pair, which leads to that read-write contention issue that Daffy was talking about. You've just got so many bots going at the same pair at the same time. The other is that we see really heavy NFT minting activity. And in that case, it's not so much contention, it's an issue of compute units. So each block has got a fixed number of compute units. The NFT mints are extremely heavy, so they can actually crowd out other transactions. And but both of those cases will lead to an increase in the pending TXQ. So, and I hope that helps. I'm happy to keep answering questions on that.
What's a little bit, so on the issue of, is it the RPC node or is it the validator? There are some people in the chat who say they were running their own validators and they had no issues at all. Who was it that said that? That's why I wanted to ask Swap.
Okay,
if he, because I know he has his own validator, and whether he was it easy to trade?
Yeah, I got price cache issues. Yeah, I didn't
Okay,
get the timeout. I didn't get client timeout issues. No.
So that's so. But the thing is, the reason why you were getting price cache issues is because our keeper was getting timed out. But if the keeper, like theoretically, if the keeper was using your node, then you wouldn't get the price cache issue. Or of course, you can also run the keeper yourself. That would be a great service.
No, but I don't think that's right. I think that it's a validator issue. There are there are only so many transactions that can get processed in like 1 second or half a second or a block, and the keepers weren't getting processed in time because there was such a long queue. So even if they'd come from Swap's node, they might still not have gotten processed. I think that's what's the issue.
But the thing is, the fact that he's getting the invalid cash price means his transactions were being processed.
Oh, that is true. Okay. So all right, now I'm confused again.
Yeah, let me make this. Sorry, 1 sec.
So does that mean that it is the RPC node again that the keeper was running on? Because again, I'm confused. So if it's like if he was running on a separate validator and his transactions were getting in there and they weren't stale, so the block hash wasn't expiring.
Well, but the keeper's doing write transactions, right? Is this the difference between write and read, or
your transactions would also be doing writes. But
so
it's possible. Yeah, it's possible that. Yeah, it is. But yours is not doing a write to the cache. It's writing
Yeah.
to the order book, but it's not writing to the cache. So, yeah, that could be the difference. Not sure.
The cache issue affects everyone. Yeah.
but when we're talking about limitations of on Solana of transactions per second, like what conceptually is the breakdown of the classes of transactions? Like I understand the compute units limit part, but is there like read-only transactions that are cleaner, write transactions that are less clean, and then writing to cache that are somehow worse? Like how are we supposed to think about this?
Ask the question again, Swap. I'll try to answer it, but I just have to hear you ask it again. Sorry.
I'm trying to understand. I mean, because the transactions per second, like, and whenever people talk about Solana, it's like, oh, there's X thousand transactions per second capacity, right? And then there's compute units as a limitation. Like, how should we be breaking down like the transaction types to understand more granularly what the limitations are and why certain ones would run into limits but others not? Like 1,000 sounds ridiculously low. Like what the fuck is 1,000?
Okay. So yeah, so the two main ways of thinking about it is like read and write. We're going to ignore compute cost because we're not NFTs, and compute cost doesn't seem to be an issue because everything's relatively efficient. Reads, anyone can read. We could have 5,000 transactions per second that all read from the same, say like Oracle or market data. There's no updates happening. So when it's read, anyone can load the data and there's really no issues. But when it's a write, only one transaction per, say like I think it's 100 milliseconds or something very small. So you can only get one write lock for that entire kind of like part of the block. Per account, yeah. So that's where you get the limitation, because there's only like, let's say I don't know, is it? It's going to sound so stupid, but a second is what, 1,000 milliseconds, right? So I think it's like 10 milliseconds each of these sub blocks. So there's 100 of those. So there's maybe 100 write locks. So you can only actually do 100 updates to that account. And that's where the limitations happen with, say, the keepers, or I don't know what else is updating the keepers or using it, but. It's my best attempt, sorry. So is Daffy gone away?
Yeah, sorry. Just another issue came up. Just give me 1 second.
I've got some general comments. I'm looking at some of the questions you guys are posting. There is a feature regarding the number of retries you want a transaction to have. So some of the people were asking about, can you set a life of the transaction, where either it's gonna hit or fail quickly. The default behavior is for the validators to retry up to 150 slots after the block hash. I believe that there is a setting on the transaction where you can specify no retries. There's also a setting that we can do on the RPC servers related to no retries from RPC. So that's something that you could experiment with, and maybe there's some value there. But that might be something to do in staging first, on a staging server, and try to experiment with it. So, but there might be a way to get that done, I guess.
Yeah, so to explain why I just gone silent, here's everything's bad all at once, right? So here's MSOL, Pith Oracle price. There's yeah, so this is Pith over the last, well, I can, if you see the 1 day time frame, last couple of hours, the price has been really bad.
Do you want to share the screen or?
I shared in chat.
Mhm.
So that's why this is not good.
So
Okay,
they mentioned
if people
to us
getting
that-
wrongfully liquidated, I think.
Yeah, they mentioned to us some ways to improve the filtering on their Oracle price. Basically, they want us to add more logic
Okay.
in
Yeah,
the price cache update.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I wrote a Trello ticket about this, but didn't get yet to work on it. If someone is like super eager and diving in.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know about this actually. So okay.
You see there's one price reporter, like the F4 to DQ.
Yeah.
It reports with a super high confidence.
Yeah.
And so what can happen is that some slots, some of the reporters don't report. And then the ones with high confidence but frequent reporting take over.
Yeah.
And so the way to control it is basically analyzing the reported confidence. It should usually be, if it's like wider than the price, right? If the confidence is wider than the actual price, for instance, is like obviously not a good value, unless maybe you didn't get a new price for 10 minutes. Maybe you need to eat it in case you really need a new price. So they recommended to do a update technique that factors in both some decay on the last update. So
yeah,
like at some point in each update, and the other one is it kind of like tries to heavily, like tries really to ignore certain confidence values or tries to not have those prices.
Easy thing is, I think if we say something like if confidence is larger, if confidence is larger than 10% of the price, then ignore it. Something along those lines.
Yeah, like a rule of thumb. They sent us also a data set. Might be a good moment to ask for another data set. So we have two failure modes we want to analyze.
Okay. Can we also, okay. All right. Well, maybe it's a good use of our time to go fix that right now. Some of these prices are really bad. I guess if you're shorting MSOL, you should not do that. It's not right now. I would consider closing out your MSOL shorts. All right, cool. I feel like I'm in that that meme of the dog and the burning house.
Is there light at the end of the tunnel?
Sorry?
We're gonna get the base
What this?
for the trees.
So Daffy, yeah, you're going to go handle all this stuff, but you're confident that you can sort out all the nodes and issues and all this kind of stuff, and people will be happy again and want to trade on Mango in the future.
Yeah, so let's think about that. I'm confident that we can figure out what's happening on the nodes, like given a couple weeks of time. I mean, it's complicated, right? And would have to actually open up the code and understand. So I think it's possible to understand what's happening. And then afterwards, after you understand, am I confident that it's possible to solve the issues? That one, like, honestly, I'm like 80% sure we can fix it. right? If it's, because we can't, well, we'll have to, all right, we have to talk to Anatoly and Mbines and all the Solana Labs engineers. But obviously we have to fix it. Otherwise, I mean, it's not sustainable. So we'll have to fix it. And then in the case we can't fix it, I'm pretty sure we can find another chain. I don't know. You know, worst case scenario, we'll do something else. Find
No, Daffy, you're not supposed to say this in the recorded calls.
Wait, why not?
Because
I mean,
people
it's
take
not-
you serious. People take you seriously. You're being like the rationalist, and you're saying things with like 80% confidence, and that's really like normal and good of you. But then people just take what you say and they put it on Twitter.
Yeah, well, it's 80%. So yeah. So I mean, let's clarify. It's an expression of my understanding or misunderstanding. So it's more like a barometer of how much do I know, which is perhaps more than average, but much less than the people who actually know how the validators work, right? So yeah, that's just a rough, you know.
But it's the find another chain thing as well. That was a pretty funny.
Yeah. So what do we do? What do we do if we can't solve it? Right? We can, I mean, look, like whatever is technically possible, I think we can solve it in Solana. Right? There's no way that you can't. You know, there's no way that you have a problem like this and you know, the Solana Labs engineers are like, we don't care. In fact, I think they're the people who are most willing to. This is not like, I think, the Ethereum side where there's more competing things that they optimize for. Solana Labs people are like, yeah, performance is key. We need to do whatever it takes to make sure Solana is fast and performant. So yeah, I think 80% is pretty high confidence, like, but it's lower because I don't know what I'm talking about. That's the problem.
I do think it's very safe to say that the Solana Labs engineers are on this. They understand it, and I think some conversations with them will go a long way.
Yeah, that's right. So no need for alarm, right? Pretty sure it's I just don't know what's happening. So
We will find out. I just want people to come away from this call feeling pumped that, you know, the problems will be solved and everything's going to be better next time.
yeah, I think it's like 100% chance that Mango has all its problems solved. So let's say 99%, right? It's not like we can close up shop or something. We're going all in. But we'll have to first figure out what's happening.
Cool, sounds good.
Yeah, is there anyone on the call who actually understands? I know Justin. Oh yeah, Justin was on the call last time. He's not on the call this time. Yeah. Anybody else? Maybe we'll get Buffalo on here next time. That'll be good.
I have a quick question. What do you think about just splitting the Mango groups into multiple markets? Won't then you have less contention for right? Means you won't have the, you would of course have cross collateral would be an issue, but yeah.
I don't think so because already, basically, if you're reading a account, then there's not much contention. Everyone can read from an account at once. But if you're writing to an account, that's a problem. And so we've been very careful to limit the amount of writes or accounts that are writable. If you're trading on a perp market or a serum dex market, this is pretty much unavoidable. There's going to be one, it's basically going to be single threaded. right? Like you can only have one right to, how do I phrase this? You can only, one person can trade on one particular perp market at a time. And it has nothing to do with the Mango group, right? Because the Mango group is just passed in as readable. And so, you know, a good way to test this, I didn't test this myself, but you could look at how were the like, were you getting as many transaction timeouts trading on, for example, Ray perp, right? Or yeah, like Ray perp has much lower volume. So, and if you get fewer timeouts on Ray perp versus Sol perp, then that kind of confirms the theory that it's like a right contention issue. Or at least it confirms the theory is a right contention issue with respect to a perp market. But even if you have isolated markets, it doesn't help because you'll still have that isolated market be writable, which will make that single threaded, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think my gut feeling is that you could definitely alleviate some of the problems, but I have to also think about it. Maybe get back later.
Yeah, 100% we could alleviate the problems. Like even the keeper maybe it can be rewritten to be less intensive and it'll save money too. So it's definitely possible.
Some extra data gathering will help in your log files. And maybe if you are tracking the current slot in your logs, and if we notice that we're seeing a lot of failures around a certain slot coming from different parts of the Mango ecosystem, that can help with the investigation, right? Now we've got something we can really focus in on. Because at the moment it is a little bit of guessing and just trying to see which way the wind is coming from. But yeah, so extra data gathering there will I think help a ton.
Yeah, I think we'll probably, I mean, one of the first tasks for today was just start logging on the keeper timeouts, number of timeouts, timestamp of the timeout.
Slot number, yep.
Slot, no, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we'll talk about it. I don't know exactly. Yeah.
Even if it's just relative, you know, so if you've got a heartbeat going in to say, okay, we're at slot number this 1, 2, 3, 4, then that can at least give us a relative place to start looking. And at the moment, I don't have an easy way to go from a timestamp back to a slot. I just end up guessing, or I get a successful transaction and then I back up from there, which isn't that we need a better way to do this. So
yeah. When you, I mean, you guys are hooked into more, you know, you provide for a lot of other protocols on on Solana. Is my understanding is that this is worse on Mango. Like it's bad all around, but it's worse on Mango. And that anecdotally, I've heard that from, you know, one market maker. Is that, you think that's true or possible? Or based on your experience?
I mean, it is possible, yes, if you've got a whole bunch of bots that are going in on your pairs. So then that read-write contention issue, you know, could be tangible and real. And so that's something to consider. I mean, we see it all the time on Radium. And that outage was because of bots all going for one Radium IDO. Since you guys are a leverage platform, I'm sure you have plenty of bot activity around your contracts for that reason. So I think it's a plausible theory that we need to keep exploring.
But the other, has it been, you know, the Radium IDOs have been bad, but has it been, as bad? Or do you know? Maybe we don't know.
We do. Yeah, we hear when we hear from you guys, we're also hearing across the ecosystem from others, and that they're also seeing transaction timeouts. Interestingly, just before you guys started this call, I heard from a customer that was trying to mint 41,000 NFTs. And so as soon as we're done here, I'm going to dig into that. And again, this is reading the wind, right?
Yeah.
To be able to say, okay, we're hearing from Mango that we've got transaction timeout issues at the exact same time. I'm hearing that somebody's trying to mint 41,000 NFTs. They may be correlated.
Yeah.
And that's the other reason that we see these transaction failures is the pending transaction queue goes up. And it's either because of read-write contention on a pair, or it's because NFTs are crowding out the compute units.
Yeah. So actually, I know in 1.9, they're going to start charging for write. They're going to charge you more for write transactions. That's a good thing. That's kind of obvious. The other thing was, I wonder if we can, maybe we can, like on the node itself, on the validator, do this batching more efficiently. Or maybe this is why we need like MEV, you know, we need guys like Buffalo or Jito to, so you can pay the validator to do it a certain way. Yeah, that gets into MEV territory, but really you can, maybe it can just be more efficient, right? Like you have a bunch of stuff in the queue. You can actually, as long as it's very complicated, but you can send out the different rights, the accounts that are being written to, or the transactions that have rights more efficiently. There are like naive ways to do it and smarter ways to do it. You have a bunch of cores, yeah. So we'll see if that's possible. But anyway, I'm gonna go try to fix this MSOL thing. It seems like people could be losing money right now. Probably are actually, and so that's bad. All right, I'm gonna do that. I'll let you guys to it.